Daniel Cross sat in his small, messy office, staring at the case file on his desk. The rain outside hit the window like a slow, constant drumbeat. It had been 3 weeks since the theft, and he still had nothing. The stolen item wasn't just expensive, it was alien technology worth billions. The city police had failed. The corporate security teams had failed. And now the case had landed in his lap. If he failed to, he could kiss his career goodbye. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. That's when his office door creaked open. A figure stepped in. Small but graceful, moving with an odd confidence. Her skin had a faint silver hue, her hair long and black, but the most striking thing were her eyes, bright amber, glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't bother introducing herself. "I hear you need a tracker," she said in a soft but firm voice. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I've hired trackers before." "None of them worked," he said. "I'm not like them." She replied, stepping closer. "I can smell what others can't. I can follow a scent days after it's gone. I can smell fear, lies, even guilt." Daniel almost laughed, but there was something in her expression that stopped him. She wasn't bragging. She was stating a fact. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lyra," she said simply. She didn't offer a handshake. Instead, she took a deep breath, sniffing the air like she was reading him. Her brow furrowed slightly. "You're desperate. You haven't slept well, and you're thinking about refusing me because you don't trust aliens," she said calmly. Daniel froze. She was right. Almost word for word. "All right, Lyra," he said slowly. "Show me what you can do." She nodded and moved toward the folder on his desk. She didn't open it. She just inhaled deeply, her head tilted. And she walked toward the window, opening it to smell the air outside. "The one who stole this was here," she said quietly, but they weren't alone. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. There had been no evidence of a partner, not in the files, not in the surveillance. "How do you know that?" he asked. Lyra looked at him with those glowing eyes. They left 2 cents. Mixed together, but different heartbeats, different fear. They left his office together. Heading to the crime scene, the building was an abandoned warehouse in the South District, now sealed with police tape. Daniel unlocked it with his clearance, and the smell of dust and old oil filled the air. Lyra stepped inside and froze. Her nose twitched slightly, her eyes scanning the dark space. She walked slowly, breathing in, then crouched near a broken crate. "Blood," she whispered. Daniel leaned closer. But he couldn't see anything. Lyra touched the floor, then brought her fingers to her nose. "Fresh enough. 2, maybe 3 days old," she said. Daniel stared at her. "You can tell that just by smelling it." She gave a small smile. "I told you, I'm not like them." As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Lyra stopped again. She looked toward a dark corner, her body tense. "What is it?" Daniel asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she turned to him, her voice low, almost uneasy. "This scent." "I know it," she said. Daniel frowned. "From where?" She shook her head. "It's from my past." Her voice was sharp now, almost defensive. Daniel could see she didn't want to say more before he could push. Lyra stood up quickly. "We need to go," she said. "Why?" he asked. "Because whoever left this scent, they know I'm here," she replied, her eyes darting to the shadows. Daniel instinctively put his hand on his sidearm, scanning the darkness. But there was no one there, no sound. Just the dripping of water from a broken pipe, still. The way Lyra's muscles were tense told him she wasn't imagining it. They stepped outside into the cold air. Daniel tried to ask again. "Lyra, what aren't you telling me?" She stopped, looking straight at him. "If you want me to solve this case, you don't ask that question again," she said. Her tone wasn't threatening, but it was final. Daniel didn't like it. But he needed her, and somewhere deep inside, A part of him wondered if he'd just hired someone far more dangerous than the thieves they were chasing that night as he sat alone in his office. Daniel replayed everything she had said. She was hiding something, that much was clear, but the way she had moved, the way she had smelled things, no one else could. It wasn't fake. He had a feeling this case was going to be far stranger than he had imagined, and maybe, just maybe, more dangerous too. Daniel didn't sleep much that night. His mind kept going back to the way Lyra had tensed in that warehouse, the way her eyes had sharpened when she caught that scent. It was more than just recognition. It was fear mixed with something else, maybe guilt. He didn't know which bothered him more. The next morning, she was already waiting outside his office when he arrived, leaning casually against the wall. Her hood pulled low over her head. She didn't greet him, just started walking when she saw him. He locked the door and followed. "Where are we going?" he asked. She didn't look back. "To the market. The scent leads there. But you need to stay quiet. No sudden moves, no questions." Her voice was steady, but her pace was fast, like she didn't want to give him time to think. The alien market. In the South District was a maze of narrow alleys and colorful stalls. Steam rising from food stands, strange smells filling the air. Spices, metals, alien perfumes, and under all of it, something heavier. Daniel couldn't smell what she did, but he could see the way her shoulders stiffened every few steps. She was following something only she could sense. At one point, she slowed near a stall selling glowing fruits, pretending to browse, but Daniel noticed her eyes scanning the crowd. Then she slipped into a side alley without a word. He followed quickly, the noise of the market fading behind them. The alley was damp, the walls covered in peeling paint and alien graffiti. Lyra stopped suddenly, crouching near the ground. She touched a small wet mark on the stone, brought her fingers to her nose. "He was here less than an hour ago," she whispered. "He's close." Daniel's heart began to race. "Your brother?" he asked. She didn't answer, just kept moving. They turned another corner and saw a shadow move ahead. Lyra froze, her hand going to the short blade at her hip. Daniel reached for his sidearm. The shadow moved again, quicker this time, disappearing. Behind a stack of crates, they approached slowly, Daniel keeping his gun ready. Lyra's breathing had changed, sharper now. "He's afraid," she said quietly, "but not of us." Daniel frowned. "Then of who?" Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed down the alley. A figure burst from behind the crates, knocking into Daniel and almost toppling him. Lyra reacted instantly, grabbing the figure and slamming them against the wall. It wasn't her brother. It was a small alien boy, no older than 15 by human standards, his eyes wide with terror. He smelled so strongly of fear that even Daniel could feel it. "Please, don't hurt me." The boy gasped. Lyra leaned closer, sniffing, then shook her head. "He's not the one. But he's seen something." The boy's voice trembled. "They'll kill me if I talk." Lyra's tone softened slightly. "Then tell us before they find you." After a long hesitation, the boy whispered. "There were 2 of them. They took the crate to Dock 17, but one of them had a mask, the kind that hides scent. I heard them say something about the exchange happening tonight." Daniel's eyes met Lyra's, and in that moment he knew they had their first real lead. But Lyra's jaw tightened. "A scent mask." She murmured, "That means they're prepared for me." Before they could question the boy further, Lyra's head snapped up, her nostrils flaring. "We're being watched," she hissed. Daniel turned, but saw nothing. Lyra grabbed his arm and pulled him back toward the market. "Moving fast, don't look behind you," she ordered. They didn't slow until they were back in the noisy crowd. Daniel finally spoke. "So they know we're onto them." Lyra nodded once, her eyes scanning the stalls. "And they're not going to let us get close without a fight." She led him into a small tea shop where the smell of herbs and steam filled the air. They took a table in the corner. "Dock 17 tonight," Daniel said quietly. "We should call for backup." Lyra shook her head. "No, the more people involved, the more sense, the easier it is for them to slip away. We do this ourselves." Daniel didn't like it. But there was something about the way she said it that made him agree. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling she was hiding a bigger piece of the puzzle. When they left the tea shop, the sun was already sinking, casting long shadows across the streets. Lyra walked ahead, her movements smooth but tense. Daniel stayed close, and for the first time, he wondered if he had underestimated just how dangerous this job would become. As they disappeared into the maze of the city, a figure watched them from a rooftop, a faint metallic mask glinting in the fading light. The figure turned and vanished into the darkness, carrying the scent of danger with them. The night air at Dock 17 was heavy with salt and the hum of distant cargo haulers. The water slapped lazily against the pylons, but Daniel could feel the tension under it all. Lyra stood beside him, her hood pulled low, eyes scanning the shadows. She had gone almost completely silent since they left the market. They crouched behind a stack of shipping crates. Watching the far end of the dock, a single flickering lamp lit the loading area, where a metal container sat waiting, no guards in sight. But Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. "They're here," she said. Daniel frowned. "I don't see anyone." She didn't look at him. "I can smell them." Daniel peered through the gap in the crates. Then a faint shape moved across. The lamplight, tall, broad, carrying something under one arm. Behind him was another figure, shorter, moving with the fluid steps of someone trained to disappear in shadows. Lyra's body stiffened. "That's him," she breathed. Daniel glanced at her. "Your brother." She gave the slightest nod, her lips tight. "But there's something wrong." Her voice had an edge now, like every word cost her. Daniel kept his eyes on the figures. They stopped near the container, the tall one pulling out a small device and placing it on the lock clicked open. The container door rolled back. Inside were several crates wrapped in dull gray coverings. Lyra inhaled sharply. "One of those crates." "It's the stolen tech," Daniel asked. "Which one?" She didn't answer immediately. Her head tilted slightly. "The third from the left." She said finally, "But it's masked. I can barely smell it." They started to move in, keeping to the shadows, but halfway across the dock, Lyra stopped, her hand on Daniel's arm. "Wait," she said, her nose twitching. "Something else." Daniel could hear footsteps now, slow and deliberate. Coming from behind them, from the darkness, 3 masked figures emerged, their faces hidden by smooth, metallic coverings. Each one carried a weapon. Daniel raised his gun, but Lyra stepped in front of him, her stance low, her blade already in hand. The leader spoke in a muffled voice. "You shouldn't be here." Lyra's answer was calm. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." The leader tilted his head slightly. "Funny, I was about to say the same about you." The fight began before Daniel could reply. The masked figures moved fast, but Lyra moved faster. She dodged the first strike, her blade cutting a deep line across one attacker's arm. Daniel fired at the second, dropping him instantly. The leader tried to circle them, but Lyra blocked his path, their movements sharp and dangerous. In the middle of it, her brother appeared at the container door, his eyes locking on hers. He hesitated, his mask hanging from one hand, his face pale. Under the harsh light, "Lyra, you shouldn't have come," he said. She didn't lower her blade. "Then tell me why you're here." The leader made his move, swinging hard at her. She twisted out of the way and sent him sprawling, then turned back to her brother. "You're working for them?" she asked, her voice low. Her brother's jaw tightened. "I don't have a choice," he said. "They'll kill me if I don't." Daniel's eyes darted between them. "We can get you out," he said quickly. "But Lyra's." Brother shook his head. "You don't understand. This isn't just about the tech. It's a trap." They knew she'd come before Daniel could react. The leader was back on his feet. Throwing a small metal sphere at the ground, it exploded in a burst of thick smoke. The air filled with a bitter chemical scent. Daniel coughed. Struggling to see, but Lyra didn't cough. She moved through the smoke like she could still see perfectly, her nose guiding her. She grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him away from the dock edge. "They're trying to separate us," she said, her voice sharp. "Stay close." They pushed through the haze. But when the smoke cleared, the container was gone. And so was her brother. Daniel looked at her. "They took him," she stared. At the empty space where the container had been, her jaw set. "No," she said. "They want me to follow." Daniel shook his head. "It's a trap." She met his eyes. "I know." Somewhere far across the water, a horn sounded, and Lyra turned toward it, the faintest trace of scent on the wind. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that said someone had made a mistake. The boat ride across the dark water was silent except for the low hum of the engine. Daniel sat near the bow, watching Lyra as she leaned into the wind, her eyes half closed, breathing slowly like she was reading every movement in the air. She hadn't spoken since they left the dock. But her focus was sharp. "They want you to follow." Daniel finally said, "Why play their game?" Lyra's voice was calm but cold. "Because sometimes walking into the trap is the only way to see who's holding the chain." Her words sent a shiver through him. He wasn't sure if she was being brave or reckless. The boat approached a cluster of rusted cargo platforms floating in the middle of the bay. Dim lights flickered on them, casting long reflections across the water. Lyra stepped off first, her boots making no sound on the metal surface. Daniel followed, his gun in hand. The air here was heavy with oil and salt. But Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Blood," she whispered, "fresh." They moved down a narrow walkway between stacked shipping containers, the metal walls echoing every step. Daniel kept glancing behind them, sure they were being watched. A low voice called out from somewhere ahead. "You came." It was her brother, his silhouette visible at the far end of the path. He wasn't wearing the mask now, but his face looked different, tired, almost hollow. Lyra took a step forward. "Why are you with them?" she asked before he could answer. More figures emerged from the shadows. Surrounding them, Daniel counted at least 8. All armed, the leader from the dock stepped forward, his mask gleaming under the dim lights. "Welcome, Tracker," he said to Lyra. "I've heard of your nose. I wanted to see it for myself." Lyra's expression didn't change. "You already know what it can do. Why bring me here?" The leader's voice was calm. "Because I want you to use it for me." Daniel tightened his grip on his gun. "She's not working for you." The leader ignored him. "You can smell things no one else can. I need you to find something. Something even your brother couldn't." Lyra glanced at her brother. His eyes dropped to the ground. She could smell the shame on him, sharp and sour. "And if I refuse?" she asked. The leader smiled faintly under the mask. "Then we test how long your partner can survive in the water with weights around his legs." Daniel's jaw tightened, but Lyra stepped slightly in front of him. "What do you want me to find?" The leader waved to one of his men, who brought forward a small locked case. He opened it just enough for her to smell. Lyra's eyes narrowed instantly. "That's—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. The leader tilted his head. "Go on, say it." Lyra looked at him sharply. "That scent. It's been dead for decades." Daniel frowned. "Dead." Lyra's voice was low. "It's a biological weapon, one that was supposed to have been destroyed after the war." The leader stepped closer. "And yet here it is, incomplete, missing." The core component that makes it active, that's what you'll find for me. Daniel shook his head. You're insane. The leader ignored him, focusing only on Lyra. You have 24 hours. Bring it to me, or your brother dies. Two of the masked men grabbed Daniel's arms, trying to pull him back. But Lyra's blade flashed in the dim light. The man on her left stumbled, clutching his side. The other stepped back. The leader chuckled. I like your spirit, but kill me and you'll never find him. Lyra's eyes locked on her brother one last time before she turned and walked toward the edge of the platform. If I'm doing this, I do it my way, she said. The leader didn't stop her, just called after her 24 hours. They took the boat back in silence, the city lights glowing faintly on the horizon. Daniel finally broke the silence. You're not going to do what he wants, right? Lyra didn't look at him. I'm going to find it, she said. But not for him. Daniel hesitated. Then, who for? Her voice was almost a whisper, for everyone who will die if he gets it. As the boat cut through the water, Daniel realized something. This case had stopped being about stolen tech a long time ago, and now they were standing on the edge of something much worse, something that could burn whole cities to the ground. The city was a maze of smells to Lyra, layers upon layers of life stacked on top of each other. Every street held its own history, every corner its own secrets. But tonight she filtered all of it out, searching for one scent. Faint and almost impossible to follow, the ghost of a thing that shouldn't exist anymore. Daniel followed close behind, still not sure how she could keep moving with so little to go on. She hadn't explained much, just said the missing component was alive in a way that made it more dangerous. He wanted to ask more, but the hard look on her face told him she wasn't in the mood. They moved through an old industrial sector. The buildings, rusted, windows boarded up, rain dripping from cracked gutters. Lyra paused every few steps, inhaling deeply, sometimes shaking her head, sometimes changing direction without a word. To Daniel, it felt random, but to her, it was a clear trail at one point. She stopped under a broken street lamp, her eyes narrowing. It's close, she whispered. Daniel scanned the shadows. Close. How? She glanced at him, close enough to hear us. The words had barely left her mouth when a shape darted across the roofline above them. Daniel drew his gun, but Lyra didn't move. She was listening. Smelling, don't shoot, she said. Sharply, it's not hostile. Daniel gave her a look. Not hostile? It's stalking us. Lyra stepped into the open, tilting her head back. Come down, she called softly. From the shadows above, a figure slowly climbed down an old drain pipe. It was an alien girl, no older than 16. Her skin pale blue, her clothes torn. She held something wrapped in a piece of cloth. Her hands trembling, Lyra's eyes fixed on that bundle. You have it, she said quietly. The girl clutched it tighter. If they find me, I'm dead, she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel lowered his gun slightly. We're not here to hurt you. Lyra took a slow step forward. Let me see it. The girl hesitated, then unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small vial filled with a faintly glowing liquid. Lyra's nostrils flared, and for the first time, Daniel saw her look unsettled. That's it, she said, and it's fresh. The girl's eyes darted around nervously. They killed my brother for this, she said. I've been running for 2 days, hiding in places they wouldn't search, but they're coming. Before Lyra could answer, Daniel heard it too, a faint hum, like engines. Getting closer, Lyra grabbed the vial and wrapped it again. We have to move, she said. The girl reached for it, panic in her eyes. Please, don't leave me. Lyra nodded. You're coming with us. They took a side alley, moving fast. But the hum grew louder, shadows sweeping across the walls as lights passed overhead. A small drone swooped down, its lens scanning the street. Daniel fired twice, sparks bursting from its side as it crashed into the wet pavement. Lyra kept running, the girl clinging to her sleeve. "They'll send more," Daniel warned. Lyra didn't answer. Her focus was on getting out of the open. They ducked into an abandoned factory. The smell of rust and mold thickened the air. Lyra pushed them into a narrow maintenance tunnel. The sounds of boots echoing above, they waited in silence. Listening as footsteps passed overhead, Lyra closed her eyes, breathing in slow and deep. Then she whispered, "They brought scent blockers. They're masking their trail." Daniel frowned. "So we lose them?" Lyra shook her head. "No, they can't mask their fear." She led them deeper into the tunnels, the darkness pressing close. Finally emerging into a basement lit by a single flickering bulb. Here she stopped, placing the vial on the table. "This is what they want. But if we give it to them, thousands die." Daniel looked at her. "Then we destroy it." Lyra didn't answer right away, her gaze on the glowing liquid. "It's alive," she said finally. "And if we destroy it the wrong way, it spreads." The girl sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest. "You can't let them have it," she whispered. Lyra's jaw tightened. "We won't." Daniel stepped closer. "So what's the plan?" Lyra looked up at him, her eyes sharp. "We take it to someone who knows how to kill it for good. But getting there means crossing half the city while they hunt us." From somewhere far above, a distant metallic clang echoed down into the basement. Lyra glanced at the ceiling, her nose twitching. "They've found us," she said. Daniel chambered around. "Then we run." Lyra scooped up the vial, her other hand grabbing the girl. "Stay close and don't stop," she said, her voice low but firm as they slipped back into the tunnels. The sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. Daniel realized they weren't just running from danger, they were carrying it with them. The tunnels spat them out into the lower district. The air thick with the smell of wet stone and burning fuel. Rain fell in thin sheets, blurring the neon lights above. Lyra didn't slow, her boots splashing through puddles, the girl clinging. To her side, Daniel closed behind, his hand never leaving his weapon. "They're fanning out," Lyra said, her voice low but certain. "They've split into 3 groups. One ahead, one behind, one closing from the side." Daniel glanced around. "How do you know that?" She didn't look at him. "I can smell them. The blockers mask their bodies, but not the burn of their weapons or the metal oil on their armor. They cut through a narrow alley, stepping over broken crates and trash, somewhere to the left." A faint metallic clang echoed. Daniel raised his gun. But Lyra stopped him with a hand on his chest. Too far to shoot, too close to run straight. She said, instead, she turned sharply into a doorway, leading them into a small, abandoned shop, shelves coated in dust. The faint scent of mold in the air. "Stay low," she whispered, crouching near the back wall. Daniel crouched beside her, the girl curling into the corner. The sound of boots on wet pavement grew louder, shadows flickering past the dusty front window. Lyra's nostrils flared as she tracked the movement. 3 outside," she whispered. 2 more across the street." Daniel looked at her. "We can't stay here." She nodded. "We won't." With sudden precision, she moved to the back of the shop, prying open a warped wooden panel that revealed a service hatch leading down. "Go," she ordered. Daniel hesitated. "You first." She shook her head. "I'll cover you." The girl climbed in. Daniel followed. The hatch barely wide enough for his shoulders. Lyra stayed above. For a moment longer, listening, then she slipped inside, sealing it behind her. The space below was tight and dark, the smell of damp earth heavy in the air. They crawled through, their knees scraping the ground. After what felt like forever, they emerged into a forgotten subway tunnel. The old tracks covered in grime, faint light coming from broken lamps along the wall. "This will take us to the east side," Lyra said. "But once we come out, will be in their main path. Daniel frowned. That's suicide. She looked back at him. It's the only way to get to the one person who can destroy this. The echo of their steps carried far, and soon another sound joined it, a distant hum, deep and vibrating. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Drones, she said. Daniel cursed under his breath. How many? Lyra sniffed the air. 5, no, 6. One heavier than the others. They ran. The girl's breaths sharp and fast, the hum growing louder. Daniel risked a glance back and saw a swarm of small machines floating into the tunnel. Their red eyes glowing in the dark. They've got weapons, he shouted. Lyra veered toward a side passage, pushing the girl ahead. A burst of energy fire scorched the wall behind them. Daniel fired twice, one drone exploding into sparks. Lyra threw a piece of metal pipe into the dark, the clang distracting the swarm long enough for them to slip into the passage. The tunnel twisted and narrowed, the smell of stagnant water mixing with something sharper. Chemical. Lyra slowed, her expression changing. We're close, she whispered. I can smell him. Daniel didn't like the sound of that. Who? She didn't answer, just kept moving. They reached a rusted ladder and climbed, merging into a dim, dripping chamber filled with strange equipment. An old alien man sat at a desk, his long fingers tracing symbols on a cracked data screen. He looked up slowly, his eyes pale and milky. Lyra, he said, in a voice like gravel. I wondered when your nose would bring you here. Daniel stepped forward. We don't have time. Can you destroy this? He held up the wrapped vial. The old man's expression darkened. Destroy? No, but I can seal it. Make it sleep. Forever. Lyra stepped closer. Do it. The man hesitated. You understand the cost? She didn't blink. Yes, before he could start. The chamber shook with the sound of footsteps pounding above. Lyra's head snapped toward the noise. They found us, she said. Daniel gritted his teeth. Then hurry. The old man reached for the vial, but Lyra didn't let go immediately. Her eyes locked on his. If you betray us, I'll smell it before you even think it. She released it, and the old man began working. Strange tools moving in his hands. The noise above growing louder. Daniel checked his gun. Knowing they might have to fight their way out, Lyra drew her blade. The girl huddled against the wall. The chamber's single door rattled, then a voice called from outside. Hours are up. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then they're early. The pounding on the door grew harder, the hinges rattling under each strike. Daniel stood ready, gun aimed. Lyra didn't take her eyes off the old man's hands as he worked on the vial. The glowing liquid inside swirled slowly, its faint light casting strange shadows on the damp walls. The girl clung to Lyra's arm, trembling. They're going to break through, she whispered. Lyra placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Then we'll greet them properly, she said, her voice steady. The old man's tools moved faster now, his long fingers twisting and locking strange mechanisms around the vial. Almost there, he muttered, but his breathing was shallow, his eyes shifting toward the door. Lyra caught the scent instantly. Not fear, hesitation, a trace of deceit. Her blade flashed into her hand before he could hide it. What are you planning? She asked coldly. He froze, then sighed. If I seal it, I can't unseal it without destroying it. But my employers would pay me twice what you can to return it intact. Daniel's gun snapped toward the man. Not happening. Lyra stepped closer, her nose almost touching his face. You already know how this ends if you lie to me again, she said, her voice like ice. The old man swallowed hard, then returned to his work. The pounding at the door stopped, replaced by silence. Daniel's eyes darted to Lyra. That's not good, he muttered. A sharp hiss filled the room. Vents along the ceiling releasing. A faint white mist, Lyra's nose twitched. "Gas," she said, grabbing the girl and shoving her toward the far wall. Daniel pulled his jacket over his mouth, firing at the vents. Sparks rained down. The old man coughed violently but kept working. The door burst inward, and masked figures flooded the room. Weapons raised, the leader stepped in behind them, his mask reflecting the pale light. "You've done well, Tracker," he said. "Hand it over, and I might let you live." Lyra didn't move. "You'll have to kill me first." She replied. Daniel fired, dropping the first two attackers. The leader advanced, ignoring the chaos, heading straight for the old man and the vial. The sealing device clicked shut just as the leader reached. Out, Lyra was faster, grabbing the vial and kicking the old man's chair into the leader's legs. Sending him stumbling back, Daniel covered her with precise shots, forcing the rest of the masked men to scatter for cover. The leader recovered quickly, ripping off his mask, revealing a scarred alien face with eyes like molten metal. "You think this ends here?" he growled. Lyra held the vial tightly. "No," she said. "It ends when you're no longer breathing." They clashed in the center of the room, his strength against her speed, each strike sharp and fast. Daniel was pinned down by gunfire. The girl hiding behind the workbench, the old man slumped in the corner. Muttering to himself, the leader managed to grab Lyra's wrist, forcing the vial toward the floor. "Drop it, and it shatters." He snarled, "Do you want to kill half the city?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Only if you're standing in it," she twisted suddenly, using his own weight to throw him into the wall, the vial safe in her other hand. Daniel took out the last gunman with a single shot, then turned to see the leader. Staggering toward Lyra again, she didn't hesitate, her blade flashing once, clean and final. The leader dropped to his knees, shock frozen on his face before he fell. Silence filled the room, broken only by the hiss of the dying gas vents. Lyra stood still for a moment, breathing hard, then turned to the old man. "Seal it completely," she ordered. He nodded weakly, his hands shaking as he locked the final mechanism. The glow of the vial dimming until it was gone. Daniel lowered his gun, stepping closer. "So it's over." Lyra shook her head. "For now," she said, her gaze on the lifeless leader. "There will always be someone else who wants it." The girl clutched Lyra's sleeve. "What will you do with it?" Lyra looked at Daniel, then back at the child. "Hide it somewhere. No one can smell it, not even me." Daniel gave a small nod. "And after that?" She let out a slow breath. "After that, I disappear." They left the chamber together, the storm outside washing away the stench of blood and smoke. Daniel glanced at her as they walked. "You could stay, work with me." Lyra gave the faintest smile. "You don't hire storms." "Daniel, you survived them." By the time they reached the streets, the rain had stopped, the air felt clean, and Lyra was already fading into the crowd. The girl holding her hand tightly, Daniel watched them go, a part of him knowing this wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed. But for now, the case was closed, and the city could sleep a little safer.